Welcome to The Learning Curve, the podcast where we explore how companies can harness emerging technologies to drive real business impact. I'm Matt Sharp, an AI engineer and strategist here at Flexion.
And I'm Holly Fake, a UX designer and researcher. Matt, before we dig in, let's do a bit of a rewind. Last episode, we talked with you and Doug about how Flexion kicked off its AI journey, starting with a big hire. Spoiler alert, that was you. How did it feel to have your hiring process put under the microscope?
Um, it was a fun story to be able to tell, and it's a hard one to tell without Doug, the person who hired me there. You know, it, I don't know how many people can say that they, kind of wrote their own job description. And I sometimes worry that might have come off wrong, but like it was really a very organic thing that transpired of, hey, you guys have this need, let me help you, and kind of being prompted and pushed into actually applying myself. And so it was overall, I felt like it was a great experience, and I think a lot of people could learn from it.
Yeah, I can imagine it was such a neat opportunity because how many times do you get to talk to the person that hired you about the things that made you come in the door? Well, today we're going to go deeper into your saga, getting a sneak peek into your role at Flexion, AI challenges, the surprise wins, all the fun in between. And joining us is Brice Ruth, your partner in crime. Maybe we call him a facilitator, enabler, you name it, in all things Flexion. Brice, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Holly. I'm one of the senior leaders here at Flexion. Um, I've been around for a while, and I've played a big role in helping shape what Flexion looks like today, and in how we do our work, how we form our teams, and how we deliver solutions for our customers. When it comes to our AI journey, it's something that kind of since a lot of the ChatGPT stuff burst onto the scene. It's been really fascinating to me to kind of get a better understanding of how things work. How is an LLM, how is a an AI doing what it's doing, and how do we harness that knowledge to be able to maximize its utility to us and to the solutions that we deliver for our customers. So a lot of mystery, a lot of potential, and it's been cool having that challenge again, and being able to explore that. So excited to talk with you guys more about it.
I love that you called it a mystery because what we're hoping is that this episode gives you a real look into what bringing on an AI lead might look like in your own organization, the wins, the roadblocks, and a few lessons you can steal from us. So, for our listeners, whether you're thinking of hiring an AI lead or you're just wondering what to expect when you do, we hope this gives you a practical look at what that really involves from day-to-day tasks to tough lessons and early wins. So let's jump in. So, Matt, you mentioned that you wrote your job description. How are you envisioning your job actually looking like day to day?
So, yeah, I think, when I wrote the job description, it was a bit more general, but when I knew that Flexion was hiring me, I kind of had a better idea of exactly what they would probably want, just given my unique strengths and skills. So I kind of saw my role as probably really kind of three pillars. Um, the first one is building. Um, I'm a builder. I have a lots of hands-on experience building AI systems and training models, and I've been doing this for a long time. And so I figured, Flexion, they were interested in not just, using AI, but also building it, being experts, helping clients, build their systems. And so they wanted to increase their mastery at being builders. And so that's kind of one of the first pillars I was coming in on understanding. The second one was really training. So I've done this a lot throughout my career. I've written a book. I've been mentors to many people. I've done training, and so there was this clear need of, well, if we want to be builders, we also have to turn the engineers that Flexion had into AI engineers and help help teach them what they needed to know. And that was one of the strengths I knew I could bring as well. And then the last one, um, maybe not necessarily my strength, but hopefully we can make this work, was I saw it as kind of marketing, right? And so ultimately, what I saw is Flexion didn't just want to become really good at this. We want to become great at this. We want to be so good at AI, that we'd be taking on new projects, new clients. We'd be expanding, the work and clientele that we take on. And so I knew that there would have to ultimately be this portion of marketing where I'm helping Flexion sell themselves as AI leaders in the space.
You mentioned being a builder, being a trader and or trainer and a marketer. How did that compare to what actually happened when you started working at Flexion?
Uh, yeah, so I would say kind of like there was a lot to learn coming in, right? And so really to do any of those things, I needed to plug myself into Flexion. I needed to meet the right people and to know who to help. And so, I mean, being a trainer isn't very effective if you don't know who's ready to learn what next step. And so, kind of getting in there, um, y- being a builder doesn't really work if you don't know, especially in AI, if you don't know like where the data is and how to get it. And so there was just a lot of kind of learning and foundations that had to be set up in order to really even approach any of these three pillars.
So then when did you two start working together?
Yeah, so I I was, I guess, quasi Matt's onboarding buddy in a sense. Myself and Doug as well, to a degree. We started meeting regularly with Matt. Matt's hire was a little different than a lot of other hires that we see here at Flexion. We weren't hiring him onto a team, an existing team, right? We were hiring him to start, you know, uh, creating this capability and this capacity within the organization. Um, so Doug and I took on that role, and really started to try to help Matt understand kind of where the pathways in the organization were that he could start walking and start taking advantage of where things where he could find out where responsibilities were and who to talk to and what opportunities existed. We have a relatively flat organization here at Flexion. And so there isn't really a notion of having a manager or a supervisor, which is typical in a lot of other organizations. Like, well, okay, you're going to go talk to that person when you need something, and we don't really have that. So it was kind of our goal to enable Matt in being able to discover where the right uh, resources and people and things like that were that he could start leveraging in the work that we were looking for him to start doing. So
I want to pull on that thread a little bit more and hear from you what you thought was most important when you were trying to get Matt started for the organization.
yeah, I think that's a good question. I think at the end of the day, what we wanted to do is enable and keep Matt unblocked, right? From our perspective, uh, hiring Matt didn't come a moment, uh, didn't even come soon enough, I guess is maybe the best way to say it. We had a lot of urgency around um, getting Matt up to speed, but at the same time, we realized that we couldn't just dump a bunch on him. We needed to help him understand how Flexion worked, to kind of you know reduce the kind of the impedance mismatch, the friction that might otherwise exist when somebody who's unfamiliar with your organization comes into that organization and is trying to get things done and trying to figure out how to get things done, right? And so we wanted him to go fast, really fast, as fast as we could get him to go. But at the same time, we realized that there's some adjustment period, some acclimation that he would need to do to just get his head wrapped around what does what does Flexion do? How does Flexion work? What is our culture like? How do you get things done in within our organization? How do you get access to things that you need to get access to? Stuff like that. Um, and yeah, so that we wanted to move fast, but we wanted to do so, um, I guess, somewhat intentionally cautiously and giving Matt space. So hopefully that worked.
How did it go, Matt?
I think it went pretty well. It was definitely a learning curve. Just as Bryce said, Flexion is very flat. I don't have, a direct manager. At other jobs, that's kind of how you get things done is you talk to your manager and they introduce you to people. Here at Flexion, there wasn't necessarily that. So there was, you know, learning how to take advantage of the different channels that we have here from guilds and squads and work items and things that we do. And so kind of learning the ropes of how to, essentially get interest, get buy-in from different stakeholders, and kind of move forward. It was a learning curve, but I think learning that has helped me accelerate a lot more. And because of not necessarily being stuck to a certain team, it's been able to help me, you know, really push the needle across the entire org of Flexion. I think one of the things I've seen from my work in other companies is, you get hired, your job is to, make AI work at some company and they stick you in a team, generally like the data team, and you're able to really improve the data team. But everywhere else, like there's politics, there's other things. And so then, it can often be like, well, the data team wants to do this, but the engineering team wants to do this, and the marketing team wants to do this, and the sales team wants to do this. And it's hard to necessarily cohesively bring them all together, but kind of taking a step back and being outside of those teams has been really good at as far as being able to have greater influence and kind of help people answer all their different questions that they have, because every single person has had different concerns and different questions that they want to ask, and kind of being outside of that has helped me answer that without having to necessarily be political. And so like people don't just think I'm trying to push, the data team's agenda, and but I'm really just there to help answer their questions and help move the needle for their specific team.
What I think is so interesting, I think so many of our listeners can connect with that desire, that urgency to implement AI, implement it now. And it sounds like Flexion kind of took a step back and thought, how might we situate our AI lead organizationally to move the most impact, to move that needle, as you were saying, Matt? So the next question that begs is, what surprised you most about how this work ended up evolving?
I think from my perspective, the first thing I thought, I said this before, is I'm coming in as a builder. So I thought the first thing I would be doing would be, hey, let's kind of fine tune our own LLM. Let's kind of build some tools and systems and maybe some infrastructure, set up any MLOps infrastructure we might need. But that ended up being pushed off for a while. A lot of what I found myself doing at the very beginning was, um, I said this before, like I was answering questions. Like one of the first questions I was answering a lot at the very beginning was, um, as kind of a consulting firm, we get a lot of requests for proposals, these RFPs, where clients are trying to understand what they need to ask for, and asking for proposals of essentially like, hey, give us a bid type work. And a lot of these requests for proposals ask questions around AI. Hey, AI is a new thing, so they want it in whatever new thing that they're building, regardless of whether or not they needed it or it made sense. But like there's always some clause there. And so there was a lot of questions, and so from a lot of different places in the organization, people were sending me these different RFPs for many different types of work, just trying to understand, hey, they're asking for AI. What do we tell them? And so that was difficult for me because these these RFPs are not, simple documents. They're often very long and very technical. And so part of it was just kind of learning that. Another part was kind of learning uh, the space. So a lot of our clients are government. So just trying to understand that aspect of things and ultimately help, hopefully giving people the type of information they needed in order to respond to those type of questions. And this was important because, Flexion at the time didn't know what, what projects should we go after. And if you look at some of them were definitely doomed to fail, because they're asking for, very complicated AI, but they didn't necessarily have what they needed, and they didn't necessarily need the AI, and sometimes AI would be overkill. And so, learning which projects to avoid as well as which projects to pursue was a large part of what I was doing when I first came in.
What about your perspective, Brice?
Yeah, I think I think that makes sense from what we were seeing as well. And I think amongst the things that Matt has talked about, I think we definitely, you know, in that realm of going after new work, that having an AI competency and capability gives us, we need to start figuring out, just like we are in the kind of more traditional type of solution delivery work, what makes a good project, right? Because generally speaking, I would say Flexion has always been a little, picky when it comes to what projects we want to go after, right? We want to do work that is impactful. We want to do work um, that is exciting to the team members that are going to be working on that project. And we also want to go after work that it looks like, from the what we can glean out of the RFP, is going to be work that we can deliver in a way that aligns well with kind of our philosophy and how we want to architect and solution that work for our customers. And adding AI into that is a dimension that kind of is its own whole thing, right? Because yeah, AI is a in some in some perceptions is kind of a shiny new bauble, right? And I think that there's some folks who feel like it's a silver bullet that is able to solve anything and everything that you throw at it. And the reality is very different from that. And I think that um, people, I think a lot of the things that we see in RFPs are people looking at what some of the premier foundation models like a chat GPT or whatever can do, and be like, oh, well, then certainly it could do this thing for the project that I have in mind. And it's like, okay, well, there's actually a distance between those two assumptions that not a lot of people appreciate. And some of that is where having someone like Matt on board with looking at those RFPs and being able to distill like some of that, like read between the lines, if you will, right? And bring some of that the deep expertise that he has, and say, yeah, this is actually a lot harder than they think it is, and we probably don't want to be in there and get into a situation where we're the bearers of bad news, if that makes sense, or this is
Yeah.
possible but not in the budget that they have or something like that, right? Like having those kinds of insights, I think, is invaluable when we're looking at RFPs.
Just chiming in, there has been the opposite, right? Of people, they know it's AI, so they think it's going to be really complicated. It's like, oh no, this is bread and butter work for AI. Like it can do this really well. So like we should definitely pursue this because we can definitely make it happen and make it really please the client because they think it's going to be really difficult, but it's actually going to be really easy. And so yeah, there's definitely both sides, right?
Yep.
And I love the way you described it as this shiny bauble. that you want to make sure that the technology is aligned with the tasks or the jobs that you're asking it to do.
That's right.
And that also begs some questions about what projects you two are working on now with AI.
Yeah, um, so what we've been finding now is I've been doing a lot of POCs, and Bryce, I think, has been there for most of those. But building a proof of concept is something we take some a week, 2 weeks. Generally, you can kind of think of it as like an accelerated hackathon where we're trying to prove it out. And it really hits all three of those pillars I was talking about. One, we're building something that we can show to a client, the marketing side. And then it's also a training experience because anyone who gets involved in these POCs, we often bring engineers that might be closest to it. They get to work with me hands-on. They get that hands-on experience of learning and building and instruction that's applicable to what we're doing right there. And so we've been doing a lot of POCs. One we recently did was for building, inspection reports. So a county, they have health inspectors go out to all these different restaurants. And believe it or not, doing the inspection is the easy part. It's coming back and having to write the report that can take a really long time because they have to cite the very specific health code. So they have to, read and understand that health code up and down. They have to, put it into specific language and generate a very specific report. And so it's pretty time consuming. And so they're wanting to see, hey, can AI help build this inspection report? And so we were able to build this POC. Um, with the timelines that we had and the amount of investment, we just took a week to build a POC. There was a small team that came together, and it was amazing to see how far we could get to what they needed. It felt like in the 1 week we almost built probably 70-80% of what they were asking for in the RFP, and so we're pretty hopeful that they'll really enjoy what we built for them. Did you have anything you want to add to that, Bryce?
Yeah, no, I think that one of the things I would add is, we like doing POCs like this. It's not only an opportunity, like Matt said, to bring folks in and kind of help them learn how some of these concepts work and things like that. Like, I think Matt introduced using a RAG in association, retrieval augmented generation, with an LLM, and that was something that a lot of folks who joined our POC effort were doing for the first time. But also, it's an opportunity for us to take things that we already understand well and say, okay, well, how are we going to do this in a particular tool set, right? And so one of the things that we've been doing a lot recently, independently of AI, is moving some of our AWS partnership efforts forward. So one of the areas that we want to also move forward is our knowledge and understanding of how some of AWS's services can help us deliver AI capabilities in our solutions. And so, Matt had a lot of experience already doing essentially what we were doing in that POC. That was nothing new for him. But we were able to take advantage of, this opportunity to do the POC to say, okay, well, we know how to do this outside of maybe certain AWS services, but let's see how we can leverage some of these new AWS offerings in this space and how those pieces hook together and gain some real practical experience in how those tools work. Um, so I think that's always useful from our perspective as well, when we're working on these POCs, and that's really, I don't know, from my perspective, that makes it a little bit more fun than just the core work. It's always the playing with a new capability that is nice.
It's fun to hear about the use case too, because I would have never really thought about inspections and restaurant inspections as a place that AI could really support the work of the people doing that function. And yet it makes a lot of sense that that would be something that could be used or created by an LLM.
Yeah, I think I think this was actually a use case that was, I said this, but, like, it's kind of a bread and butter, right? Like, LLMs are good at helping us write quicker and more consistent, and so being able to, use the LLMs to generate inspection reports, it definitely made a lot of sense. Now, there was definitely technical hurdles, right? Like, we had to do what we could to reduce hallucination, to prevent, the LM from just making things up. And so there was kind of a lot of engineering that had to go into ultimately the solution to get what it needed. But um, yeah, I mean, kind of the bare bones of what we built. Like I was just impressed at how quickly we were able to move, even giving the considerations of, training and time limits and everything like that. But so yeah, so that was good. I mean, it obviously it's a POC, just a proof of concept. So there was still quite a bit to do to even get it to an minimal viable product of what the client was asking for, and then iterate on that to make it really production ready. But there's a lot you can do in just a week time if you're just trying to prove out the concept. So.
So, what we've learned from our conversation today is that we all want our AI transformation now, but onboarding an AI lead can take time. And if we really want to set somebody up for success, you may want to connect them with somebody like Brice. Hopefully, you have a Brice in your organization. But don't rush your implementation. You need to create space for acclimation and for connection. At Flexion, we connected our AI strategist with a business leader who could introduce him to key players and change makers in the organizations. Also, AI requests and RFPs may be asking for a shiny new bobble when it isn't needed, or your use case may be solid, and an AI lead may help you vet what opportunities seem like the right ones, seem like that bread and butter that Matt was talking about.
Well, that's it for today's episode of The Learning Curve. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe and share this podcast with your leadership team. And be sure to tune in to our next episode where we'll dive deeper into some of the actual work we've been doing. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, I'm Matt Sharp.
I'm Holly Fake.
Thanks for listening.